He didn't join a cult, at least not at first. He joined a discussion circle, a weekend retreat, a small community that said the things he'd been starving to hear. You matter. You are special. You've been sleepwalking through life, and we can wake you up. They listened to his story without looking at their phones. They remembered his name. When he cried, someone put a hand on his shoulder and said, "This is your real family now." Soon there were new phrases in his mouth. The work, the path. Sleeping less became sacrifice. Doubt became ego. Friends who questioned the group were toxic or asleep. The group offered a complete explanation for everything. His loneliness, his shame, the chaos of the world. By the time he realized how much power the leader had over his life, his relationships, his money, his body, leaving felt impossible. He wasn't just walking away from the system of belief. He was walking away from who he had become. In this episode, we're going to look at cults, not just as weird groups out there, but as extreme relationships between leaders and followers. We'll move through ancient cultures and early stories of sacred communities, why our brains are so ready to fuse with a group, and the psychology of thought reform, trauma bonding, and identity loss. By the end, the question isn't only why do people join cults, it's what parts of us are they skillfully borrowing, and what does it cost to get those parts back? Cults originally wasn't an insult. It comes from the Latin cultus, worship, care, and cultivation. The ancient world cults were simply systems of devoted worship and ritual. Some were mainstream, others were small, secretive, and intense. Take the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. Once a year, thousands walked the sacred road from Athens to the sanctuary of Demeter and Persephone. Over several days, initiates underwent fasting, ritual bathing, and a nighttime ceremonies. At the climax, they were shown a secret symbol or enactment that supposedly revealed the mystery of life, death, and rebirth. They swore an oath of a lifelong secrecy, revealing the rites was punishable by death. To those inside, this wasn't a weird fringe group. It was an identity. Being initiated meant you now knew something that ordinary mortals would never know. Other cults centered on more ecstatic experiences. Dionysian cults dedicated to Dionysus, god of wine and ecstasy, gathered in mountains at night. Participants, often women with little public power, wore animal skins and wreaths, drank, danced, and entered trance-like states. Outsiders saw chaos. Insiders experienced being taken over by the gods. Their individual self blurred into a collective frenzy. Across the Mediterranean, the cults of Isis and Osiris in Egypt and later Rome promised personal salvation and protection in this life and the afterlife. Initiates learned special prayers, wore amulets, and joined tightly knit networks that cut across class and nationality. What all these share is not just belief, but ritualized belonging, separation from ordinary life, special places, secret rites. A story that explains suffering and promises meaning, the sense of being a part of a chosen inner circle. Philosophers were very aware of how powerful this could be. Plato worried about the intoxicating pool of collective emotion, while later Christian thinkers saw rival cults as dangerous competitors for people's ultimate loyalty. Already the raw materials for modern cults are visible. Intense community, special knowledge, and the feeling that truth lives inside the circle and nowhere else. Forms will change, torches replaced by YouTube lectures, temples replaced by compounds of Discord servers, but the basic structure of sacred us, and lost them is surprisingly old. Especially in the 20th century, after a series of tragedies forced psychologists and journalists to look more closely at how these communities work. In the 1950s, social psychologists Leon Festinger and colleagues infiltrated a small UFO group that believed the world would end on a specific date and that a spaceship would rescue them. When the prophecy failed, something strange happened. Many members became more committed, not less. Festinger used this to develop cognitive dissonance theory, when reality clashes with deeply held beliefs. It's often easier to adjust your interpretation of reality than admit you were wrong. Decades later, cults would test this mechanism on a much larger scale. The People's Temple under Jim Jones began a progressive church preaching racial equality and communal care. Members fed the poor, took in the elderly, adopted children. It felt radical, loving, and just over time, Jones centralized power. Controlling finances, sleep, food, and information. In the settlements of Jonestown and Guyana, loudspeakers broadcasted his voice over hours each day. Members rehearsed suicide drills when a US congressman came to investigate. Violence erupted. Under Jones' command, more than 900 people died together after being ordered to drink poison. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, human potential or success organizations begin to show similar dynamics. NXIVM, marketed as a self-improvement and executive coaching company, brought people in through leadership seminars. At the core, investigators later found a secret women's group where members were starved, branded with the leader's initials, and required to provide damaging collaterals such as compromising photos, confessions, or secrets to ensure obedience. And now some researchers argue that certain online movements function like digital cults. There may be no commune, but there is still a sacred narrative, a charismatic influencer, a heavy us versus them worldview, and social punishment if you question the doctrine. Algorithms amplify emotionally charged content, reinforcing the belief that everyone who sees the truth ends up here with us. So historically, cults have moved from temples and mystery religions to charismatic churches and apocalyptic communes to self-help empires and online radicalization spaces. But if the costumes and language change while the underlying pattern stays eerily familiar, it suggests the key question isn't just what's wrong with these groups, it's what is about the human mind that makes this pattern so repeatable. To understand why cults can feel so compelling, we need to zoom out to evolution. Most of our history's survival depended on small, tightly bonded groups. Being cast out of the band wasn't just lonely, it was deadly. Our nervous systems learned one central rule: belonging or die. Evolutionary psychologists talk about coalitional psychology, mental systems designed for tracking allies, enforcing group norms, and detecting threats. Our brains are extremely sensitive to signals of who is us and who is them. Who follows the rules and who betrays them, who we can count on when danger comes, and joining a strong coalition, especially under threat, feels safe. Recently, work on identity fusion takes this further. Psychologists like William Swan and colleagues describe identity fusion as a state where the boundary between me and we become almost invisible. People report a visceral sense of oneness with their group. They feel that what happens to the group happens to them personally. Fused individuals are often willing to make extreme sacrifices, even risk their lives for their group. In a healthy context, this can look like heroic altruism, a firefighter, a resistance fighter, someone protecting their family. In cults, the same mechanism is exploited. The more fused you are with the group, the easier it becomes to accept demands that would once have seemed unthinkable. Severing ties with family, handling over money, enduring abuse, and even participating in violence. There's also costly signal. In evolutionary terms, doing hard, painful, or expensive things for your group sends a powerful message. I'm all in. You can trust me. Sacrifices, giving away possessions, moving to a compound, getting a tattoo or a brand, both prove loyalty and deepen it. After you've paid a high price to belong, walking away feels like betraying yourself. Biology backs this up. Social acceptance triggers reward systems in the brain. Being praised or honored by the group can release dopamine, oxytocin, and endogenous opioids, chemicals that make us feel pleasure, bonding, and relief. Rejection, by contrast, activates some of the same brain regions involved in physical pain, like the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. Social exclusion literally hurts. From an evolutionary standpoint, then, cults can be seen as groups that have learned consciously or unconsciously to hack ancient systems. They offer intense belonging and a heroic purpose. They create threats, real or imagined, that make group fusion feel necessary. They reward costly displays of loyalty that bind people even more tightly. Our brains aren't broken in cults. They're doing exactly what they evolved to do, just in an environment designed to capture and monopolize those capacities. Which brings us to the next layer, not just why we're vulnerable to group devotion, but how leaders systematically reshape thought, emotion, and identity. Researchers looking at psychological manipulation have identified pattern techniques, isolating members from alternative perspectives, inducing guilt and fear, alternating harsh criticism with love and approval, and gradually escalating demands. At the beginning, the process feels like love. New members are overwhelmed with warmth, attention, and praise. Their vulnerabilities are listened to with apparent compassion. This creates a powerful emotional debt, a sense that group has saved them. Later, when criticism or control appear, they're framed as spiritual surgery. We are only hard on you because we see your potential. The fact that this hurts means your ego is dying. Psychologically, several mechanisms start working together. Cognitive dissonance. Once you've sacrificed a lot, it's painfully dissonant to admit the group is harmful. Trauma bonding is when kindness and abuse are interwoven. Affection one moment, humiliation or threats the next. The nervous system forms an attachment where the abuser feels like the only source of relief from the fear they have themselves created. This pattern is well documented in domestic violence. Cults reproduce it at a scale. Identity fusion. Over time, the member's personal identity fuses with the larger group in identity. Research on identity fusion shows that when this happens, people channel their personal agency into serving the group, often endorsing radical self-sacrifice. Language also plays a crucial role. High control groups often develop loaded jargons, simple phrases that carry complex emotional weight. Words like worldly or apostate, the word purity, ego, faithful, or enemy become shortcuts for a moral judgment. This compresses thinking. Instead of wrestling with nuance, the members sort of experience it into categories, predefined by the group. Over time, their inner monologue begins to sound like the leader's voice.
Do you feel that? That emptiness? That is what happens when you drift. They will confuse you. They will pull you apart. Come back. Come back now. Say the words. Repeat them until your chest settles. You are nothing. Alone with us. You are chosen.
The science we've explored, such as identity fusion, cognitive dissonance, thought reform, trauma bonding, and neurobiology of belonging, helps explain why cults are so powerful. But it also reveals something important. The very systems cults exploit are not pathological. They are the same systems that make deep friendship possible, that let us sacrifice for our children, that allow social movements to fight injustice, that make love and community feel real. Cults are not alien to human nature. They are human nature, captured and weaponized by a closed ideology and a hungry leader. The question for the rest of us isn't just, could I ever join a cult? It's more uncomfortable, and which groups do I feel that my value depends on total loyalty? Where do I suppress doubts or critical thinking to protect belonging? Who do I let define my reality for me, even a little? Because the line between devoted community and destructive cult isn't always obvious from the inside. It's often marked not by what a group believes, but by how it treats your autonomy, your relationships, and your right to leave. Healthy communities will challenge you, yes, but they will not demand you to erase yourself. They will not insist that truth only lives with them. They will not punish you for asking questions or walking away. For those who have left cults, healing is the slow, brave act of taking the pen back and writing. This is my story now. I can choose my beliefs. I can choose my people. I can belong without disappearing. And maybe that's the deepest lesson here. Belonging is vital, but any belonging that requires the death of your selfhood isn't love. It's control wrapped in the language of devotion.